resentment and anger. I am a 43 years old man who has increasing challenges of distance and bitterness growing in my relationship with my wife. I can see clearly how this is counterproductive and increases my suffering and suffering in our family. Yet the resentments seem to so correct, powerful and compelling. With all the pain, tension and distance these resentments create, there is still yet a part of me that seems to also feel they are necessary to keep me safe in some way, like a shield against something that would undo me, crack me, turn me into something weak, helpless or powerless. Again, although this makes no sense to my logical mind, it doesn't seem to diminish how compelling they are. I want to move forward, to love more fully, to give without counting the hurts and measuring the withholdings and spiteful treatment of my partner towards me, and I feel caught in the magnetic pull of these resentments. And light and love you could shed on this would be appreciated. I am grateful that you are a teacher that also has a wife and 2 children. Question: what is a constructive way to deal with persistent thoughts and feelings of resentment and anger, especially when they seem so powerful and correct? It's a tricky question. Family, of course, being in a relationship, raising family, children, is where a lot of things happen. Using that term karma, karmically, is where a lot of work happens, because the greater the connection, the greater amount of that essentially is being released. And where is the greater connection? Of course, there where the blood and bile, isn't it? The gene, where there is when all this is involved. And our nearest and dearest is precisely that field where the most karma is being delivered. So first of all, before we go into constructive way to deal with persistent thoughts and feelings of resentment, right, and anger, I want to address the part in your question where you see, especially when they seem so powerful and correct. When you say everything in this sentence, I'm fine with, except that one word, and you add, and correct. Because there is this sense of conviction on your part that what you feel is justified, therefore you use that term. You could also could have used that adjective instead. Okay? We can read it back to you now. So instead of correct, we'll use now the word justified. So it will be, especially when they seem so powerful and justified, isn't it? Because correct has that feeling here. Is that what feels justified? Our anger, in other words, is justified. Resentment and all these other feelings. So before we go into this, and I don't want to just leave you with just that attention, but I want you to first to look into this aspect of feeling that indeed that this what you experience as negative states are powerful and correct. In other words, what makes you feel that they are correct? Of course, it's not about going into the details, because I totally trust you that there are assessments. You know, if someone, for example, done something to us, and there are certain basics in interaction which we could say that, well, that's obviously not enjoyable, not pleasant, not on in any culture, in any family. So that could be one of those where what you're experiencing is some kind of violation of what you consider to be sovereign, what you consider to be should not be violated. And I will go into that very slowly because it's very important. Because the more our system of values is being violated, the more we feel unjust. Bear that in mind. It is why relationships are much easier, at least when there is a shared ground. At least when there's a shared ground of culturally held, culturally shared ethics. Because if they're not, then one will bump against these differences over and over, to the degree where, for example, something which is very obvious to you is totally oblivious to your partner. And for the partner, it's not even a big deal, but to you it is. Then the partner will not even know what the heck is going on, because, okay, you said that to her or to him many times, that is very important to you. But that is not important to her because you don't share this perspective. So what do? This is just an example, but I take you back to the term correct. And that term itself poses tremendous problem, because if we feel justified, if we feel that whatever happens in the field of conflict in the family, that we have a just, right way, right perspective, then whatever we experience will be doubled, if not tripled. Because, let's face it, for example, if you've been naughty, right, in whichever way, we don't need to go there. If you've been naughty and someone caught you, and even if you deny that, let's say not you, we've been naughty, you and I, okay? We've been naughty, we did something on the side, we know it, and we've been caught. It might not feel pleasant. We've been given a hard time, but at least deep down we know that we own that. So it doesn't feel as bad. It still feels pretty terrible, you know, for goodness sake, why shall I be told off this way in my own household? But I know that I have the reasons, so at least we can bite our lip, pretend that we're really upset, but deep down we thought, okay, well, anyway, you know. But imagine if you feel that everything is correct and it's totally justified. Your anger and resentment is indeed justified. What do you do then? There's no room. None. There's nowhere to go. There's no leeway left. There's no leeway left where that membrane has the flexibility. It just stretches to the limit until it snaps. So the first, perhaps, rule of thumb is to release the insistence that it's always correct and that is always justified. At least release that to the degree that I don't know. Do not be afraid that you can lose your manliness or you lose yourself in that not knowing. Releasing that actually requires greater power and greater manliness than holding to what we often believe to be right. By definition, all conflicts in the family, one way or the other, are karmic. By definition, this is the place where things are simply delivered. Let's not kill the postman. Yes, it's very uneasy perspective. Yes, some deny that, some dismiss the karma, dharma, whatever. What are these Sanskrit terms really mean in our modern world? And we're supposed to be much, much more plainly spoken and kind of relaxed about it all. Let's just speak in plain English. I have no problem. We can speak in plain English. But one way or the other, it is in the family when we receive the most lessons we need to receive. Nowhere else. Everything else would pale in comparison to what we receive in our family. Everything else pales in comparison, as simple as that. So that is already good to know. That is the only correct thing to know there. Everything else is vague, not correct. Everything else is open to the interpretation and possibilities. But that one thing is certain. So I want you to have that rule of thumb that there is always a possibility that something is played itself out. And greater forces are always at work behind every conflict. And you feel sometimes how 1 year was a very difficult year. I don't know how long is your relationship. Sometimes it's just like that. Sometimes it feels as if we're going through the hell. Literally. Everything was fine only to be thrown into the pit of hell, and the definition is not short from what it actually stands for. Because the greatest hell is also felt in the family, nowhere else. Yes, we can be upset about this, that, but no greater hell, as well as greater heaven, than in our most immediate environment, in our most immediate surrounding, and that is where our family is, where our spouse and our children are. So, I want you to first have that. Not always everything is correct, but something else is working. So you give way, you give more space, you give more possibility. And then if you allow that, it will be much easier to introduce constructive way of dealing with these persistent thoughts. Releasing and relaxing that everything is justified and worked out in your head will give a possibility to actually, it's like taking the lid off, letting the steam out. There is also a possibility that you are not expressing yourself fully. But I don't want to go. This is the domain of psychology now, the domain of therapy. Domain of therapy is essentially, every psychologist will tell you, whenever there are problems in the family, it is due to the lack of communication. It's lack of communication. It doesn't matter whether conflict between the nations or in the home front, it is miscommunication. It's two values came together. When two values, your value and the value of your spouse, come together, certain territory is shared. The territory where these values are shared, we feel great. We feel held, supported, heard, nourished, cherished, recognized, seen, and hopefully loved. But the territory which is not shared is the ground for possible misunderstanding, dispute, disagreement, all the other Ds leading all to conflicts. When we do not bring anything out into the open for a prolonged enough time, it's a matter of fact that we will be fried by our thoughts. We will literally be skewed by what we feel, and what then, of course, we feel is mostly resentment, that bias feeling of dissatisfaction, resentment. Anger is only a flare. Anger is only a flare because we can no longer contain that. So the second rule of thumb is to open the line of communication. And how can you open the line of communication? Unless you are prepared to hear the other. Unless you are prepared to listen the other. I did say I'm not a therapist because my job is point to the totality of your existence. And totality of your existence includes your wife, does not exclude her. Another wife, maybe after a honeymoon, good time, maybe a couple of years, the same thing will come back because something you need to learn about yourself. Your partner teaching you something about yourself. You like it, you don't like it, I don't like it, matters not. That's what the relationship is about. Relationship really is choosing what you want to do. You want to have a relationship, be prepared for something reflected back to you. You don't want it, you don't want to face it, you can't face it, don't enter a relationship. Stay single, if it's possible. You see? So, relationship entered, there is already the word correct goes out of the window. You cross it. It doesn't even enter your head, correct. It's correct now when you feel angry, don't get me wrong. When you feel angry, be as pissed off as you are, don't bottle it up. As soon as you're not angry, own yourself. Be a man, show that forgiveness, love, give that shoulder, give that hug, do whatever you need to do. But all this will be of no significance unless you own yourself, unless you really, really can listen yourself, listen your voice. When you can, then you can listen another. There's no way to understand another being if we don't understand ourselves. Relationship with another person is relationship with ourselves. All relationships go through ups and downs. That's the part of life. That's the drama of life. That's the fun of it. Some of the strongest couple, let's say, speak now also this plain language. No longer using Sanskrit now, I promise. Some of the most, let's say, well-known couples in the history have known to go through these hellish periods. The greatest lovers went through that. Unless they were Romeo and Juliet, then they were lucky to be dead in their 16th year. Then what left after them is only that perfume of that first love. Tragedy, right? But not everything in Shakespeare. Shakespeare doesn't deal with the marital affairs when it's getting bored and boring, when it's like, mundane stuff. There's not enough tragedy. I don't want tragedy in your life. Trust me. I don't want tragedy in our lives of householder. But it will be there. These powerful moments when everything is called to question will be there. Sometimes love will be questioned. Sometimes we'll be pushed to the limits of ourselves. So you need to know all that. Then the word correct is gone. Yes, powerful will be there. But justified, how can you know it's justified? So reflect on that. Reflect on that and let that show you the way. Let that show you the way so that the peace and harmony is restored in your heart first. Let that peace restored in your heart first, and then it will be restored in your home. Trust me. Trust me. And I'm not talking about how to keep the family. I'm not a therapist. You need a therapist, I'll give you some friends. I have friends in California. They deal with marital affairs, They deal with difficulties in marriages. But you have to own yourself. So let the peace in your heart dawn. Tend to that peace, and you'll see how you'll be able to restore that peace everywhere. Everywhere in your life.